I had been secretly watching my Apache neighbor, a widow for 10 years. Turns out she noticed. For 10 years, he had watched quietly. From a distance, always careful not to be seen, the rancher observed his neighbor's life. She was an Apache widow, living alone with her children after her husband had passed away many years before. The rancher had never intended to intrude, but over time he had grown attached to the little glimpses of her life he could see from his property. He admired her quietly from afar, respecting her space, her grief, and her strength. Every morning he would see her stepping out into the sunlight, her children trailing behind her, moving with purpose and determination. She had a way of carrying herself that was both gentle and strong, as if she carried the weight of the world and yet refused to bend under it. Even though the rancher had never spoken to her beyond a passing nod or a polite wave, he felt connected to her life in a way that words could not describe. He learned the rhythm of her days, the early trips to the market, the tending of her small garden, the way she carefully cooked meals for her children, and the quiet moments when she seemed to pause and simply breathe. The rancher's admiration was not romantic in the usual sense. It was deeper than that. He admired her resilience, the way she faced each day with courage, and how she refused to let the loss of her husband define her. He often thought about how lonely her life must be at times, and he wanted to help, but he never knew how to step in without seeming intrusive. For years he settled for watching from a distance, imagining small ways he could ease her burdens without her even knowing it. But some days he would catch her struggling to carry a heavy basket of vegetables from the garden to the house. Other days he would notice her bending over to comfort a crying child or repairing a fence with determined hands. He felt a silent urge to offer help, yet he held back, telling himself that respect meant more than action. He could do small things unnoticed, like quietly fixing a broken tool that had fallen near the fence or leaving a bundle of firewood stacked neatly where she could find it. Those small gestures were his way of being part of her life without disturbing it.
The rancher often thought about the seasons passing.
Spring brought bright green fields and fresh vegetables. Summer meant long, hot days and hard work under the sun. Autumn painted the trees in gold and red, and winter arrived with its quiet chill. Through every season, he watched her adapt, adjust, and continue to provide for her children. Even during difficult times, like when a sudden storm damaged part of her property, she faced the challenge without complaint, fixing what needed fixing, comforting her children, and continuing on. Her resilience inspired him more than words could ever express. Over time, he began to notice small details about her life that others might not see. The way she laughed softly when her children played near the riverbank, the way she wiped sweat from her brow after hours in the sun, the careful way she planned her meals and chores so that nothing went to waste. He even observed her moments of quiet sorrow when she would sit on her porch after sunset, looking out over the land, perhaps remembering her husband or thinking about the future. Those moments made him ache with a mixture of empathy and admiration, wishing he could ease her heartache in some way. The rancher's neighbors sometimes noticed him spending long hours looking toward her property, but no one ever suspected the depth of his feelings. He was careful to remain invisible, careful to respect boundaries, and careful not to let curiosity become intrusion. He knew that trust could not be forced, and he valued the life she had built for herself and her children. There was a certain beauty in watching from afar. He could witness her strength and dedication without influencing it. As the years passed, he found himself thinking about her constantly. In quiet moments he imagined conversations he might have with her, small jokes he could make, or the ways he could offer support. He often rehearsed what he would say if the opportunity ever arose, yet he never rushed the moment. Patience had become his companion, and admiration had become his quiet ritual.
He cherished these years of observing, feeling that even from a distance he was learning about courage, love, and resilience in ways he could not learn from books or the world beyond their shared land.
Despite his silence, he sometimes felt a strange sense of companionship. There was an invisible thread connecting their lives, one that was built on respect and careful observation. He had watched her children grow taller, stronger, and more confident, and he had seen her adapt to each stage of life with grace. That silent connection became a quiet comfort to him, a reminder that even unspoken bonds could carry meaning. One summer evening, as the sun began to set, casting golden light across the fields, he noticed something unusual. She was standing at the edge of her yard, looking in his direction, her eyes seemingly fixed on him. For a moment he froze, unsure if he had been noticed. His heart raced. Could it be possible that she had known all along? The idea had never occurred to him, and yet the way she looked at him felt gentle, patient, and knowing. For a moment he wondered if all these years of silent observation had been mutual, if she had seen him in the same way he had seen her. That thought was both thrilling and frightening. He had built an entire decade of quiet admiration on the assumption that he was unseen, that his presence mattered only in subtle, invisible ways. Now the possibility that she had always noticed him shifted everything.
He remembered a day long ago when one of her children had dropped a toy near the fence.
Without her seeing, he had picked it up and placed it carefully back in the yard. He had done it quietly, expecting no recognition. But now, thinking about the way she looked at him, he wondered if she had seen it all along. Perhaps she had recognized his presence in the small acts of kindness he had left behind. Perhaps she had understood that someone cared quietly for her well-being. The rancher's mind wandered to the many small interactions they had shared without words, a wave, a nod, a brief exchange at the market. Each of those moments now felt layered with unspoken understanding. Maybe she had always acknowledged him. Maybe she had always appreciated his silent admiration. And maybe, just maybe, she had been waiting for him to show his intentions more openly. He sat on the porch that evening, watching the fading sunlight and thinking about the years that had passed. 10 years of quiet observation, 10 years of gentle admiration, 10 years of living in the shadow of a life he could only glimpse from afar. And now, for the first time, he realized that the distance he had maintained for so long might no longer be necessary. Perhaps the time had come to step out of the shadows, to bridge the gap between silent admiration and meaningful connection. As night fell and the stars appeared in the sky, he felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. He did not know what the future held or how she would respond if he approached her. But, for the first time in 10 years, he felt a sense of possibility. The quiet life he had built around observation and respect was ready to meet something new, a chance for recognition, a chance for connection, and perhaps a chance to be a part of her life in a way he had never dared to imagine. He thought of her children, growing up so quickly, and of her enduring strength. He thought of the many small moments he had witnessed, and of the care he had always tried to show without drawing attention to himself. And as he closed his eyes for the night, he silently promised that, if given the chance, he would continue to watch over them. Not from a distance this time, but as a presence she could count on. A friend, a protector, and perhaps something more. For 10 years, he had admired her quietly. For 10 years, he had remained unseen, respectful, and careful. And for the first time he felt that his admiration might not be a secret any longer. Perhaps she had known all along. Perhaps she had always noticed. And perhaps, just perhaps, their paths were about to cross in a way that would change both of their lives forever. Breath. After the moment when she had looked directly at him across the yard, the rancher felt a strange mixture of excitement and nervousness. For 10 years he had observed her quietly, always careful to remain unseen. But now, for the first time, he wondered if their connection could go beyond silent admiration.
Perhaps she had noticed him all along, and perhaps it was time to allow that quiet bond to grow into something more tangible.
The days that followed were different. Every morning he would see her tending to her garden or caring for her children, but now there was a sense of awareness in the way she moved. Sometimes he caught a brief glance of her eyes, and for a moment their gazes would meet. He felt a warm recognition in that shared glance, a silent message that she had been aware of him all along. It was small, yet it filled him with hope. He began to notice the subtle ways she acknowledged him without words. A nod when they passed each other near the fence, a quick smile when she waved at him from a distance, a casual "good morning" at the market. These small gestures meant the world to him. After years of watching her life unfold quietly, these tiny acknowledgments felt like doors opening to a new chapter. They were bridges between their lives, and he treasured every one of them. The rancher was careful not to rush anything. He knew her life was full of responsibilities, and he did not want to appear intrusive. She had her children to care for, her home to maintain, and her own grief to navigate. He respected her boundaries, understanding that trust could not be forced. Instead, he looked for opportunities to help quietly, in ways that would make her life easier without drawing attention to his presence. One afternoon, he noticed her struggling with a broken wheelbarrow while trying to move soil for her garden. Without thinking, he walked over and offered a hand. "Need some help?" he asked, keeping his tone gentle and respectful. She paused, her eyes meeting his, and then she nodded. Together, they lifted the heavy wheelbarrow and finished moving the soil. It was the first time they had worked together, and though the task was simple, it created a new kind of connection between them. During the work, they spoke about ordinary things, how the soil was dry, how the weather had been unpredictable, how the children were growing fast. Their conversation was light, but it carried a weight of understanding. He realized that she was not only aware of his presence, but also willing to accept his help. The rancher felt a quiet relief, a sense that he could finally be part of her life in a meaningful way. As the days went by, their interactions became more frequent. Sometimes it was a shared task in the garden. Other times, it was a brief conversation at the local market. Each encounter strengthened the bond between them. He learned about her daily challenges, her dreams for her children, and the small joys that brought her peace. In turn, she began to see his quiet strength, his respect for her life, and the care he had shown without expecting anything in return. The rancher often thought about the years he had spent observing her life. 10 years of quiet admiration had taught him patience, empathy, and the value of subtle gestures. Now, as they began to interact, he realized that those years had prepared him to understand her in a way few others could. He knew her routines, her strengths, and even her vulnerabilities, and he approached each moment with care and consideration. One evening, as the sun began to set and the sky was painted with shades of pink and orange, he saw her standing near the fence with a basket of fresh vegetables. She looked directly at him and smiled, a small but meaningful gesture. He walked over slowly, careful not to rush the moment. She handed him the basket and said softly, "I see you. Thank you for watching out for us."
The rancher felt a rush of emotion. For years, he had wondered if his quiet acts of care had gone unnoticed.
Now she was acknowledging him openly, confirming that she had seen everything, the small gestures, the quiet support, the silent admiration. It was a moment of recognition that filled him with both joy and humility. From that day on, their relationship grew in small, meaningful ways. They shared more conversations, often about simple, everyday matters. He helped her repair fences, carry firewood, and tend to her garden. She, in turn, began to trust him, allowing him to be part of her life without feeling that he was intruding. The rancher understood that trust was built slowly through consistent, respectful actions, and he was willing to wait. There were moments of quiet reflection, too. He would watch her from a distance, appreciating the way she managed her life with grace and determination. But now there was a sense of mutual awareness, a silent understanding that connected them beyond words. He no longer felt like an observer. He was becoming a participant in her life, a friend she could rely on, and perhaps someone more. The rancher also became aware of her children in new ways. He admired their curiosity, their energy, and their respect for their mother. He often found himself lending a hand, offering small guidance or simply being present in ways that supported both mother and children. His presence became a quiet source of stability and support, reinforcing the trust he had built with the widow. Over time, he realized that their connection was no longer one-sided. She looked for him in small ways, sometimes pausing to speak with him, sometimes acknowledging his efforts with a smile or a nod. These moments, though subtle, carried profound meaning. They were signs that she had noticed his care, that she valued his presence, and that a bond of mutual respect and understanding was growing between them. He often reflected on the journey they had shared, even in its early stages. 10 years of silent admiration had led to these small, meaningful interactions, teaching him patience, empathy, and the importance of respect. He understood now that true connection was built over time, through observation, understanding, and consistent support. The quiet years had not been wasted. They had prepared him for this moment of shared awareness and mutual recognition. One day, she invited him to help with a larger task, repairing a section of fence that had been damaged in a recent storm. He accepted eagerly, and together they worked side by side, lifting heavy posts, hammering nails, and reinforcing the structure. The work was physically demanding, but it brought them closer. As they labored, they shared stories, laughter, and occasional silences that felt comfortable rather than awkward. During these shared tasks, the rancher noticed more about her character. She was resilient, thoughtful, and patient. She approached problems with careful consideration, and she had a quiet sense of humor that made the hardest tasks feel lighter.
He admired her deeply, not just for her strength, but for the way she treated her children, the land, and the people around her with care and respect.
She, in turn, began to see him in a new light. She recognized his quiet determination, his willingness to help without expecting recognition, and his deep respect for her life in space. Despatia. She had always noticed him, but now she appreciated the consistency of his presence, the thoughtfulness behind his actions, and the genuine kindness that guided his every move. The rancher felt a quiet satisfaction in being able to contribute, to be present, and to support her life in small but meaningful ways.
He had admired her from afar for 10 years, and now he was learning the joy of being part of her life, even in modest ways.
Each interaction, each shared task, and each smile strengthened the bond between them, building a foundation of trust, respect, and quiet affection. As the weeks passed, they continued to interact more openly. Conversations became longer, gestures more meaningful, and the sense of mutual understanding grew stronger. He learned about her hopes, her dreams for her children, and the memories that shaped her life. She, in turn, began to rely on him as a trusted friend, someone who cared for her and her family without seeking recognition or reward. One afternoon, as they worked together in the garden, she looked at him and said softly, "I know you've been there all along. I've noticed everything."
The rancher felt a warmth spread through him. For 10 years, he had wondered if his quiet admiration had been seen, and now he had his answer.
She had noticed, and she had accepted him in her life. This acknowledgement changed everything. He no longer felt like an outsider looking in. He was part of her life, and she was part of his. The quiet admiration that had defined his relationship with her for a decade had evolved into a shared understanding, a bond built on respect, trust, and mutual recognition. The rancher reflected on how much he had learned from those years of watching and waiting. Patience, empathy, and respect had guided his actions, and now they had brought him closer to the person he admired most. He understood that connection could grow in unexpected ways, that trust could be built quietly, and that the smallest gestures often carried the deepest meaning. As evening fell and the sky turned soft shades of pink and orange, he felt a sense of peace he had not known before. 10 years of quiet observation, respect, and care had led to this moment, a moment of shared awareness and mutual recognition. He realized that while the journey had been long and quiet, it had been worth every moment. And so, the rancher continued to be part of her life, not just as an observer but as a presence she could count on. Their bond was still growing, fragile yet strong, built on years of quiet admiration, small gestures of kindness, and a deep respect for one another. He knew that the future held many possibilities, but for now he was content to be there, watching, helping, and sharing in the life of someone he had admired for a decade. The days that followed their shared work and quiet acknowledgments were filled with a new sense of closeness. The rancher had stepped out of the shadows of silent admiration and into the gentle light of shared understanding.
No longer was he merely an observer of her life. He was becoming a part of it.
Yet, with this new closeness came a deeper awareness of her strength, her vulnerabilities, and the careful ways she had built her life after loss. One afternoon, as the sun hung low in the sky, casting long golden rays across the fields, she invited him to help with a task he had often admired from afar.
A portion of her fence had collapsed after a recent storm, and the rancher quickly agreed to assist.
He arrived with tools in hand, but as he approached, he noticed something different in her expression. There was an openness, a trust in her eyes that he had not seen before. It was as though she was welcoming him fully into her world, no longer keeping the quiet distance that had defined their relationship for so long. Together, they worked side by side. The physical labor was challenging, lifting heavy posts and hammering nails into stubborn wood, but it was the quiet conversations that truly mattered. They spoke of ordinary things at first, the weather, the soil, the upcoming harvest. But gradually, the topic shifted toward personal reflections. She spoke about the challenges of raising her children alone, the worries that sometimes kept her awake at night, and the memories of her late husband that lingered quietly in her heart.
The rancher listened with patience and understanding.
He did not offer advice unless asked, and he did not rush her words. Instead, he provided a calm presence, a steady support that required no explanation. In those moments, he realized that his admiration for her had grown into something deeper, a desire to be a part of her life in meaningful ways, to share burdens, and to offer quiet strength when it was needed most. For she, in turn, began to share more about her own experiences with him. She spoke of the early days of widowhood, when loneliness seemed overwhelming and the world felt empty. She recalled the nights spent comforting her children, making sure they felt safe even when her own heart was heavy. She shared her fears of not being able to provide enough for them and the small victories that gave her hope.
In telling these stories, she revealed a vulnerability she had rarely shown to anyone. The rancher felt honored to be entrusted with these intimate parts of her life.
He realized that trust was more than being present. It was about listening without judgment, understanding without interruption, and showing care without expectation. Each word she shared, each story she told deepened the bond. For the first time, he felt that he truly knew her, not just as a neighbor or a quiet figure he had admired from afar, but as a person with hopes, fears, and dreams. There were moments of silence as well, comfortable pauses that spoke volumes. They would stand together by the fence, watching the children play or the cattle graze in the distance. And sometimes words were not necessary. The rancher understood that these shared silences were a form of connection, a quiet acknowledgement of mutual respect and understanding. Ground in those moments, he felt a sense of peace that had eluded him for years, a feeling that perhaps they had both been waiting for this connection without knowing it. One evening, after a long day of repairs and conversation, they sat together on the porch steps. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and the air was filled with the soft sounds of nature. She turned to him and said softly, "I have always noticed you. I have seen the care in the little things you've done, the quiet ways you have been here all along." The rancher felt a warmth spread through him, a mixture of relief and joy. For 10 years he had wondered if his quiet admiration had been seen, and now he knew the truth. They began to share more than just stories of work and daily life. He spoke of his own past, of the challenges he had faced, the lessons he had learned, and the quiet ways he had found to cope with loneliness. He told her about the years he had spent observing her life from a distance, about the admiration that had grown in silence, and about the hope that he might one day be a presence she could rely on. She listened attentively, her eyes reflecting understanding and appreciation. The rancher noticed the subtle ways she responded to his words. She would touch his arm lightly when sharing a memory, smile at a story that reminded her of her own experiences, or pause thoughtfully before speaking, as if considering the depth of their connection. Each gesture, no matter how small, reinforced the sense of trust and mutual respect that was growing between them. He realized that connection was not built solely on words but on shared moments, gestures of care, and the willingness to be present for one another. Over time, their relationship grew in a quiet, steady rhythm. They shared meals occasionally, simple gatherings that allowed them to talk and laugh together. The rancher admired the way she prepared food for her children, how she ensured that every detail was attended to, and how she managed to create warmth and comfort despite the challenges of her life. He, in turn, offered to help in small ways, bringing extra supplies, repairing broken items, or assisting with tasks that were physically demanding.
These acts of service were his way of showing care without overstepping boundaries.
There were also moments of playfulness, small instances of laughter that lightened their interactions. A spilled basket of vegetables would lead to shared laughter as they cleaned up the mess together. A stray calf wandering into the garden would prompt teamwork and teasing as they tried to guide it back. These moments, though simple, created memories that strengthened their bond and reminded them both that life could hold joy even amidst responsibilities and challenges. The rancher began to notice the impact of his presence on her children as well. They were curious, energetic, and respectful, often seeking his guidance or simply enjoying his quiet company. He felt a sense of fulfillment in being able to support them, not as a replacement for their father, but as a steady, caring presence in their lives. The children's laughter, their questions, and their small gestures of trust became a part of the fabric of his own daily life, deepening his connection to the family he had admired from afar. She, too, began to rely on him more openly. She would ask for assistance with tasks that were difficult to manage alone, seeking his opinion or his help without hesitation. The rancher understood that this reliance was not a sign of weakness, but a testament to the trust and bond they had built. He approached each request with care, ensuring that his support was helpful without being intrusive, strengthening the quiet partnership that had formed between them.
One afternoon, after a particularly long day of work repairing the fence and tending the garden, they sat together quietly, watching the sun dip below the horizon. She spoke softly about her hopes for the future, the dreams she held for her children, and the desire to find stability and happiness again. The rancher listened attentively, offering gentle words of encouragement, sharing his own hopes, and assuring her that she was not alone in her journey.
It was in these moments of vulnerability that their bond deepened the most.
She trusted him with her fears, and he responded with patience and care. They had moved beyond the stage of mere acquaintances or silent admiration. They had become confidants, partners in small ways, and companions in the quiet moments of life. Each shared story, each gesture of care, and each moment of understanding wove their lives together in ways neither of them had anticipated. The rancher often reflected on how far they had come. From years of silent observation, he had moved into a space of trust, mutual respect, and quiet companionship.
He understood her better than he ever could have imagined, and he felt that she understood him in return. The years of patience and careful attention had prepared him for this moment of deeper connection, and he was grateful for the slow, deliberate journey that had brought them together. As the days continued, their conversations became more personal and heartfelt. They shared stories of family, memories of the past, and aspirations for the future.
He learned about the cultural traditions she cherished, the values she instilled in her children, and the ways she had navigated life's challenges with strength and dignity.
She, in turn, learned about his life, the lessons he had learned on the ranch, and the quiet ways he had sought connection and meaning over the years. One evening, as the stars began to twinkle in the sky, she turned to him with a gentle smile and said, "I have always noticed you. Even when you thought I didn't, I did. You've been here, quietly, patiently, and I've appreciated every moment." The rancher felt a surge of emotion. 10 years of silent admiration had finally been recognized, and the acknowledgement carried a weight of validation and connection that words alone could not capture. That night, as he walked back to his own property, he thought about the journey they had shared. 10 years of observing from a distance had led to this point of trust, understanding, and shared vulnerability. But he realized that admiration alone was not enough. It was the actions, the patience, and the willingness to be present that had forged a bond capable of lasting significance. He felt a sense of fulfillment and anticipation, knowing that their connection had entered a new, more intimate phase. The rancher understood that this was not the end but a turning point. Their bond, built on years of careful observation, shared tasks, and growing trust, was ready to evolve further. The foundation of mutual respect, understanding, and quiet affection would allow them to face future challenges together. He knew that life would continue to bring difficulties, but he also knew that together they could navigate them with patience. And so, part 3 of their story ended not with grand gestures or dramatic revelations, but with the quiet understanding that had taken years to build. They had moved beyond admiration into trust, beyond casual interaction into meaningful connection. The rancher had become more than an observer. He was a partner, a friend, and a presence that mattered. She had recognized his care, embraced it, and allowed him into her world. Their lives were now intertwined in ways that would shape the coming days, months, and years, setting the stage for the next chapter of their journey together. The days had grown warmer, and the rancher felt a quiet excitement as he moved through his property, knowing that his bond with the Apache widow had reached a new depth. 10 years of silent admiration, of watching from a distance, had finally evolved into friendship, trust, and shared understanding. He had become a part of her life, a presence she could rely on, and the thought filled him with both gratitude and anticipation. One morning a storm began to gather over the horizon. Dark clouds rolled in and the wind picked up, bending the trees and sending leaves flying. The rancher, noticing the approaching storm, immediately thought of her. Over the past few weeks, he had been helping her with repairs to the fence and other parts of the property, but the storm threatened to undo their hard work. Spadan, the master of the dark, without hesitation, he grabbed his tools and headed toward her home, determined to help. When he arrived, he saw her struggling to secure loose boards and protect the garden from the wind and rain. Her children were inside, safe but anxious, watching the storm from the windows. She looked up as he approached, her eyes filled with relief. "I didn't expect you so early," she said, her voice calm but edged with worry.
"Thank you for coming," he nodded, his expression serious but gentle. "I couldn't let the storm damage everything."
"We'll get this fixed together." The rain began to fall lightly, and the rancher and the widow worked quickly, securing the fence, moving delicate plants under cover, and reinforcing weak spots that could easily collapse in the strong wind. Barians. Their movements were coordinated as though they had been doing this together for years. There was no need for constant conversation. Their understanding of each other was deep, built from months of shared work, quiet gestures, and small acts of care. During a pause in the work, they stood side by side, watching the rain hit the earth. She looked at him, her expression thoughtful.
"You've been here more than anyone else ever has," she said softly. "Not just today, but all the times before, quietly helping, quietly caring."
I've noticed everything. The rancher felt a surge of warmth. He had always wondered if she had truly seen him, and now he knew. I've only ever wanted to help, to be here when you needed it, he replied. I didn't want to intrude, but I always hoped to make things easier for you. The storm intensified, but their determination never wavered. They worked tirelessly, moving equipment, securing the garden, and reinforcing the fence against the gusting wind. Each action was a testament to their growing bond, a combination of physical effort and quiet support. The rancher realized that this moment was more than just repairing damage. It was a demonstration of the trust and understanding they had built together over months, and the recognition of a connection that had taken 10 years to form. As the storm passed, leaving a soft drizzle and the smell of fresh rain in the air, they surveyed the work they had done. The fence was sturdy, the garden protected, and the children safely indoors, watching the two of them with wide eyes.
G turned to him, smiling with genuine gratitude. "You've done so much," she said.
But not just today, but everything before. I don't know how to thank you. He shook his head, smiling in return. Breaths. You don't need to. Seeing you and your children safe and cared for is enough for me. Fast. The rain had washed the air clean, leaving everything glistening and renewed. They stood together quietly for a moment, feeling the calm after the storm. For the rancher, this was more than just the aftermath of a storm. It was a symbolic moment, representing the years of care, patience, and understanding that had led to this point. He had admired her from afar for 10 years, shared tasks and conversations for months, and now he was fully present in her life. In the following days, their interactions became even more natural and open. The children grew comfortable with his presence, laughing and playing as he assisted with chores, and he found joy in the simple moments of connection. He had become a trusted part of their family, and she relied on him not just for physical help, but for the steady presence that brought comfort and security. Their bond was now fully mutual, grounded in respect, trust, and quiet affection. One afternoon, as they sat on the porch, enjoying the calm after the storm, she spoke softly about her life and the changes she had experienced since the passing of her husband.
"It hasn't been easy," she said.
There were times I felt like I was alone, like no one truly understood the weight I carried. But you've been here all along, quiet, patient, and always caring. The rancher listened, feeling the depth of her words.
I never wanted to interfere, he replied, but I always wanted to make things a little easier for you in whatever way I could. She looked at him, her eyes reflecting gratitude and something more, a recognition of the years he had spent patiently waiting, observing, and caring.
But I've noticed every small gesture, she said. Every quiet moment. Every time you helped without asking for anything in return. Bess. I've always appreciated it more than you know. He smiled softly, feeling a sense of fulfillment that only comes when unspoken efforts are truly seen and valued. Their relationship had grown beyond simple friendship. There was an unspoken understanding, a quiet love that had developed not through grand declarations but through years of shared experiences. Patience and respect. The rancher realized that admiration alone was not enough. It was the consistent, caring presence that built trust and connection. And she had acknowledged that presence, recognizing the depth of his care and the sincerity of his intentions. In the days that followed, They continued to support each other in practical ways. He helped with farm work, repairs, and everyday tasks, while she welcomed his assistance and companionship. They shared laughter and stories, creating memories that strengthened their bond. The children, once cautious and shy around him, now saw him as a reliable friend and protector, someone who cared deeply for their well-being. Pay. One evening, as the sky turned soft shades of pink and gold, she invited him to sit with her on the porch. They watched the sunset together, the air filled with the quiet sounds of nature. Bay.
You've been here through so much, she said.
Bay. I don't think I ever realized how much it meant to me until now. He nodded, feeling a deep sense of connection.
It was never about recognition, he said.
I just wanted to be here, to make life a little easier, to share the burdens quietly.
The rancher realized that their journey together had reached a point of balance.
They had moved from silent observation to mutual acknowledgement, from cautious interaction to shared understanding, and from admiration to a bond built on trust, respect, and quiet affection. The years of patience and care had led to this moment, a stage in life where their connection was strong, meaningful, and ready to face the future together. She looked at him thoughtfully, her expression soft.
I think we've both been waiting for this, in our own ways, she said. 10 years of quiet moments, shared glances, and careful actions, it all brought us here. He smiled, feeling the truth in her words.
For him, it had been a long journey of observation, patience, and careful respect. For her, it had been the recognition of those efforts and the trust to allow him into her life. Together, they had created something lasting, built not on haste, but on understanding. The rancher felt a quiet joy in the realization that the relationship was no longer defined by distance or hesitation. He was fully present, fully acknowledged, and fully trusted. She, in turn, had allowed him to become part of her world, not just as an observer or helper, but as someone who mattered. Their bond, formed over years of careful attention, shared work, and mutual respect, had reached a stage of quiet fulfillment. As the sun set completely and the first stars appeared in the sky, they sat together in silence, content with the simple presence of one another. The storm, the work, and the shared moments had reinforced a sense of partnership and companionship. They knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but now they faced them together, with trust, respect, and quiet affection as their foundation. In the days that followed, the rancher continued to help in practical ways, while their conversations became more personal and heartfelt. They shared dreams, hopes, and reflections, discussing not only the daily challenges of life, but also the small joys and victories that made it meaningful. The children, thriving in this environment of trust and care, continued to grow, and the rancher felt a sense of pride and fulfillment in being part of their lives. One afternoon, she placed a small basket of vegetables on the fence with a note. "Thank you for always being here. I see you." He smiled, touched by the gesture, knowing that the words reflected not only gratitude but a deep acknowledgement of the years of silent care and mutual understanding. That small act symbolized everything their relationship had become, a bond built on patience, trust, and quiet, unwavering support. As the story of their lives unfolded, it became clear that their connection was something rare and meaningful. It had begun with silent admiration, evolved through mutual acknowledgement, and deepened into trust, care, and companionship.
10 years of quiet observation had led to a partnership that was strong, supportive, and filled with quiet joy.
And so, the rancher and the Apache widow continued their lives side by side, facing each day together, supporting one another, and sharing moments of laughter, work, and quiet reflection. The journey that had begun with silent admiration had reached a stage of full recognition, trust, and mutual affection. They had both noticed each other all along, and now they were finally able to live and work together as friends, companions, and trusted partners, ready to face the future as a team.